All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today for our salary negotiation presentation. And I'm just so excited because we have a UNG alum here, Kondwani Kapembwa. She was one of our work study students when I worked on the Gainesville campus in the Career Services office. And so I'm just so happy to see her again. And it's just so nice when I see on LinkedIn that she has a new job, a new promotion, a new something. And it's just so much fun seeing her progress in her career. She graduated from UNG in 2019 with a degree in finance, which I wish I was a numbers person because I remember helping her negotiate her first salary, and we were talking numbers and I was looking at what they were going to offer her. And I thought, gosh, darn it, why don't I like numbers? So she was doing pretty well. So while at UNG, she was an active member in Enactus, and she also completed an internship with Siphon Logistics. And she now works at BlackRock as an associate, as an Aladdin Client Services. And so Kondwani, I'll let you go ahead and explain a little bit more about what that is and what BlackRock does.
Yeah, thanks, Lori, and thank you for having me. So yeah, like you said, I am currently at BlackRock working in Aladdin, in client services. So Aladdin basically is a portfolio management software. So it enables a lot of our users and clients to be able to manage their daily investments and stuff like that. And so my role here is really just helping clients with their inquiries and just manage their daily investments and issues that they may have and help them enhance the software as they needed to. Yeah, Lori helped me negotiate my first salary back in 2018 when I first got that offer. And between then, I've switched roles a few times. So from my first role at Capital Group in the operations sector, stayed there for a while, got promoted there. And then transitioned into another role in private client services where had to negotiate there a little bit as well. And we can talk more about, how I went from negotiating within one company and then transitioning into another company and how that went as well as we go through the PowerPoint.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. And also, so that everyone knows, I'm joined today with our co-host, Brooke Owenby. She's out at the Oconee campus, and Brooke is going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the chat as we move along, and we'll answer them as we go. So thank you so much again for being here today. And so the reason why to negotiate, of course, is to try to get the best salary to start building on your career, because you don't want to find yourself 5-10 years from now and realize, oh my gosh, I could have made so much more money, because it's not only about the current paycheck, but it's also about building your retirement funds. It's also about creating that standard of living that you're hoping to have. But also negotiating is a valuable skill for your career, and being able to navigate those waters successfully will also help you in your career and be able to use those persuasion skills and keep track of your accomplishments throughout. I know that when Kondwani was, tracking her successes in her career, that's one of the best things you can do, is when you're saying, this is why I deserve this raise, or I need this raise, or, we are going to be talking about this raise or promotion. We need to be looking at what are all the accomplishments that you have, what are all of the, achievements, and what kind of impact have you had on that business. And it really shows the employer that you understand your value to that company, and where you fit within that company as well. And so a lot of times people start to think, well, I want to make a salary that gives me a good standard of living. I always say, well, then what is that salary? Is there a particular number? And it's like, well, I need to make at least 6 figures. Well, that's a lot of money. Do you need to make that? Do you want to make that? So sometimes we just need to really understand, what is our standard of living and where do we want to live? Kondwani, your first location, it was in Norfolk, Virginia. I can't say Norfolk.
Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah,
I just said Virginia Beach at this point.
Yeah, that is easier to say. So would you say that the cost of living was different than what you had when you lived in the Gainesville area?
Compared to Gainesville specifically, yes. Compared to Atlanta, also yes. I would say it was a little bit higher than Gainesville, but slightly lower than Atlanta. There's not too many big differences, but I think especially in like the rent and maybe some of the entertainment stuff, which is something big to also take into consideration when you look at the cost of living. I think rent prices were about the same, but as far as entertainment, that was a lot less than Atlanta. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So a lot of those different things, yeah, really can impact what that salary should look like. And then of course, ultimately impact how are you going to negotiate that salary. So I have a website here that, you can jot down for yourself, take a picture of whatever works best for you. And there are a lot of cost of living calculators out there. I like using this one because it's pretty straightforward. You type in, the location that you're currently at, where are you looking to go? And it does that comparison. What are the grocery prices, utility prices on average for these different locations? So you get an idea if it's going to be a higher, equal to, or lower cost of living, because that could affect the salary as well. And I'm sure, a lot of you have heard, since a lot of these companies have allowed their employees to work remotely, the big debate is, what should the salary be? Should the salary be lowered if they go to a lower cost of living area, even though they're doing the same job? Should it remain the same? And so companies are trying to grapple with this because sometimes they would have a higher salary because the cost of living was higher in that area. So then the idea is, well, if you move to a lower cost of living area, do you really need that salary? And that's something that employers have really been struggling with over the last couple of years. So when you are negotiating your salary, you do want to create where you're winning, they're winning, between you and the potential employer, or if this is for a promotion within your company, which is something Kondwani can definitely talk about. And then negotiating, it really is not a competition. You don't want to say, company A has given me this, so company B, you have to match or exceed that. And then you're hoping they'll compete with each other. And that's really not a situation you want to find yourself in. You do need to know what you're willing to compromise on. Before we were live and in person here, well, not really in person, are we? In person online, does that count? Anyways, so before we got rolling, we were talking about how I used to work on the Gainesville campus, and I recently transferred up here to Dahlonega. And part of the reason was because I wanted to shorten my commute. Now, I was not going to compromise on the kind of work that I do. I love being in career services. I love the work that I do. So at the time when I moved here, the only opportunity was down on the Gainesville campus, which for me was a little over an hour commute. I was willing to compromise to a certain extent my commuting time. So I'd have to leave at usually 6:40 in the morning so that I could get down to the Gainesville campus a little bit before 8. If we had an event, that meant I had to leave even earlier. And then I usually got home around 6:35 at night. If there was no traffic, if there was an accident on 985 or I got stuck behind a tractor, forget it. I usually be getting home at about 7 p.m. So that makes for a really long day. So I was willing to compromise on that. And then once my coworker relocated, I was like, oh, I don't have to compromise on this anymore after 6 years of doing that drive. So you do need to know, what are you willing to compromise on when it comes to the job and when it comes to the salary and the benefits. And then when you are negotiating, you do need to explain the value that you bring and why you should be compensated for more. So especially if they give you a salary range that's much lower than what you expected, and they say, well, why do you think you deserve more? That's when we need to make sure we've got those accomplishments that you can say, this is why, this is, what I've done, but in the past, these are my skill sets, this is my education, this is what I'm bringing to the table. So you definitely want to make sure that when you negotiate, it's, you want to wait until the company's ready to make a deal. So if the employer is good at interviewing, they should not be talking salary and doing negotiation at the initial interview. You should wait until the company offers you a position. You know that they want to hire you. Now you're in the position to be able to give that salary range. Try your best to avoid giving numbers off the bat if you can. So they may ask, what are your salary expectations? And you can always come back with, what's the typical range for this position? Well, let's hear what you have to say first. So they might do some of this back and forth, but do have that research done well in advance so that you can give that range if you have to name it first. And, if you're not willing to walk away from the deal, you're not really negotiating, you're begging, and you definitely don't want to find yourself in that situation. So Kondwani, can you give a few more ideas on, what kind of strategies did you use when you were negotiating your salaries?
I would say from this most recent transition, definitely not giving the numbers first. You definitely want, so if you talk to a recruiter first, they will be the first point of contact that will ask you, well, what are you expecting? And that's really a good point to just be like, well, what is the job offering? What's the price range? And if that's before you've done your research, just be like, okay, well, I can come back to you with an amount once I've looked into this a little bit more. Glassdoor will be your best friend with finding out what salary ranges they're offering. And I would say don't be scared to go for the higher mark than the lowest one, because you never know what their budget is like. They might actually have even more budget than what's listed. But if you say the very lowest amount because you think that's what might seem fair, you might be losing out on, a few thousand more that you could be getting. So yeah, I would definitely say let them ask you first, give a range. If you've worked somewhere before or you already have an amount that you're making at the time, I would definitely consider, okay, how much more would I be willing to make to be happy, or to fit into my cost of living? How much more do I need? If that fits into that salary range that they're offering, then say that number. And it could be something phrased along the lines of, hey, this is what I'm currently making and this is what I am hoping to be making in the future. You can embellish a little. I don't think that would hurt. Let's say you're making 50 and you're hoping to make 60. You can say, well, I'm in the 55 range now and I'm hoping to make 60. At the end of the day, that will still have you at a little bit of a higher salary range than what you could have gotten otherwise. So yeah, those are my 2 cents.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. And that's, a lot of times, this you may encounter even at the application phase, asking what is your current salary or your salary history. Now, there are some states that are outlawing this because of the pay disparity between men and women, between different ethnicities. So they are trying to eliminate that, but not every place has done that. And sometimes they will ask for, what are your expectations? And so trying your best not to give a number. You can always say, I'm open to negotiation. I would like to learn more about this opportunity. Now, I know there are times when, let's say you're doing an online application and it will only allow you to put in a number. So then if it doesn't allow you to put in a range, then put up at the higher end of the range. Just because you definitely, as Kondwani had said, you don't want to give it so low that they go, oh, let's just snatch this person right up. We just saved ourselves a whole lot of money. And, also thinking about what is the most important to you, not only the money, but what is the entire benefits package? So Kondwani, what were some of the things that were important to you because I know you made the decision to go from Virginia to come back to Atlanta, and then of course to go from one company to another company. So what were some of the things that you were looking at?
I would say between moving states, the biggest thing was your location. And so if you're considering moving to another state for work, that's something you definitely want to ask. It wouldn't hurt to just ask and say, hey, do you guys offer a relocation package? And just seeing what they would be willing to offer for that. The cost of living is definitely something that I had to take into consideration, especially when moving back, because rent prices are skyrocketing. It's getting ridiculous. And also, I mean, after starting to work for a while, the things that you do spend money on tend to increase. And so the more money you make, the more you spend. So that's something to definitely take into consideration. As a woman, their benefits package, if I were to decide to have a child, what does their parental leave look like? What's their flexible time off or paid time off look like? Those are all things that, you know, you can take into consideration. And I know most companies won't really budge on some of that when it comes to time off, but it's still definitely worth asking just in case, because you don't know unless you do ask and find out. The location, that's definitely important. Work-life balance. I will say with my current job, they offer like flexible time off. So you could basically take off almost at any point. Now, obviously within reason. So that was a big selling point for me, just being able to say, okay, I need to take these next 2 weeks off and be able to do that. So yeah, those were some important things for me.
Wow, you can get 2 weeks off at a time? That's awesome.
Yeah, you can even take a month and it's
I'm
fine.
telling you, I really wish I was a numbers person. I'm telling you, I can't do that. Oh my goodness. So yeah, it's, you know, understanding, you know, what value do you bring? You definitely don't want to be underselling yourself. You do need to look at that entire benefits package, because there may be other areas that you can negotiate. If the salary, the number isn't exactly what you were hoping for, are there other areas to negotiate? So Kondwani, like I said, we had mentioned her first job right out of UNG when we were thinking about, okay, let's prepare for this negotiation. And when she spoke with the company and said, is there room for negotiation? They gave the salary, they gave her the offer. She asked, is there room for negotiation? The answer was no. Nope. But what were some of the things that they offered that said, well, we can't negotiate on the, you know, the base salary, but here are some of the other perks?
So some of the other perks, I will say the sign-on bonus was not too bad. They also added relocation, which was a big thing for me because I'd never moved out of state before, and that definitely helped. But I mean, no, you would definitely hear no from some companies, especially in an entry-level position, because most of them tend to have like a set amount for their incoming new employees. So they'll just say, well, you know, we can't do anything now, but depending on your performance, you know, within the next 6 months or a year, you might be able to improve your salary. And that just goes into, you know, how well you document what you do. And then you could definitely leverage that, you know, the next 6 months to a year that you have been performing to then negotiate and ask for a better salary.
Yeah, and I think, you know, another thing you can always do is, you know, if they say that, you know, this is it, this is as good as you're going to get, you can always ask, can I approach you in 6 months and do a 6-month performance review? And then we can look at the salary and negotiate at that time. So that's always an option. But the key is, like I've mentioned before, is really tracking what you're doing for the company, and not just, I am here and I'm simply doing my job. What are you doing that's adding value to that company, going above and beyond, and really showing that you're, you know, accomplishing a lot more than what is just in the simple job description. What else are you learning? What else are you contributing? And really keeping track of that. And that's something, that's a habit that I got into early on in my career, because when I worked for the federal government, we did reviews every 6 months. So I guess it was biannual. So we did a 6 month review. And then I just got in the habit of just putting that in a Word document. And now when working here at UNG, we only do this once a year, but it's so great that when it comes time for performance reviews, I already have it written out in a Word document. All I have to do is clean up the formatting and send it to my supervisor. And it's so easy. You know, I don't have to try to remember what I did last year. And so one way that, you know, like Kondwani was mentioning about, you know, how to do your research, there are a lot of different ways that you can do your research. And I know we are still playing this game of guess the salary, which is, you know, frustrating at times. Now, again, there are some states that are looking at requiring companies to at least put a range on their job announcements. In fact, starting today or starting early this month in New York City, most companies have to provide a salary range on their job announcements. Now, that being said, companies don't really want to do that. And it's got its pros and cons for sure. But I mean, it does help you as the job seeker to kind of know what you're working with and should you bother pursuing that opportunity or not. But the way some employers are trying to get around that is they work with third-party recruiting, like outside recruiting companies that then don't have to post the salary. So we'll see how it goes. But New York City is kind of the test pilot, so to speak, and then there are some other states that are looking at that as well. So in the meantime, if you're not going to one of these states or not going to New York City, we still need to do the old-fashioned guess the salary range. And sometimes it helps by talking to people that are in your network. Now, Kondwani, you had mentioned the way you found your current position was through an old high school friend.
It was, yeah. And we touched base on a completely unrelated position. But this is someone who worked where I currently am, and they were able to kind of guide me. I could ask them pretty much anything, the culture, the pay range, obviously, and just anything about the position. So I would say definitely leverage people that your LinkedIn connections would be a big help. Having someone who is in the company, doesn't matter what level they're in, but having someone who's in, at least they can find some of that information that you're not going to be able to find on the actual job application or some of the online searches. It definitely helps. My high school friend was able to kind of give me for this position, this is the range, but hey, if you're interested in this other position, this is also the range, but these are the advantages and disadvantages of both. And that left the decision kind of up to me and what I wanted to go for. But your network will be your biggest ally, because sometimes they can tell you things that, Glassdoor or salary.com, they're not going to tell you a lot of that information.
Right. And so, yeah, so definitely using your network in terms, especially UNG alums, because they're more likely to help you, whether it's a UNG alum, high school alum, someone that knows you and says, hey, I want to take care of, someone who came from where I came from. And that's always really nice and comforting. But if you don't have one of those people in your network, these sites will at least give you a good ballpark range. It will let you know, hey, am I in the right area? Is this the kind of job I want to go for? And making sure that you meet those minimum standards. You're going to have bills to pay. You're going to have rent or a mortgage, utilities, childcare costs. There's all these things that we have to pay for. So we want to make sure that we're pursuing opportunities that's going to keep the roof over our head. And so as Kondwani mentioned, some of the other things that were important to her, about any kind of parental leave, any kind of stock options, any kind of insurance, flexible schedule. And I know especially now with, some companies, they're saying, okay, you do have to come back to working in the office, but we can make it hybrid for you. So looking at those kind of opportunities, because, let's say, gosh, the salary isn't what you want, but you only have to be in the office 2 days a week. Think of all the gas money you're going to save. And, so like I mentioned, my commute has been, cut in about half right now. I haven't filled up my tank of gas in 2 weeks. And so that's quite a savings, because of course, before it was just being left out on the road because I was driving so far. So those kind of things can really have an impact on the finances as well. Kondwani, are there any others to this list that were, something that you considered as well?
I will say something that I did not consider was parking. So my previous role, parking was free. We could park anywhere, but here we actually have to pay for parking out of your own pocket. So that's something to definitely take into consideration. It's not a super big deal, but each person is different. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. Even the amenities at your office building, if you will have to be going in, those are things to take into consideration. If you're someone who likes to go into the gym and you're possible new office has a gym, that could be savings that you could have to, that you'd be making instead of paying for Planet Fitness, you can use your work gym. But yeah, no, everything on this list, especially vacation time, profit sharing is another pretty important thing because that goes into your bonuses if your company does offer that. So they can't give you an exact, oh, this is the bonus we're going to give you, but at least having an idea of like, okay, they do give bonuses around this time of year depending on company performance. Then you at least know, okay, you have other compensation that will be coming to you mid-year or at the end of the year or whatever it could be.
Yeah, and there was a company that I spoke with a while back that had childcare on site. And I thought, wow, that's a great benefit right there.
Yeah, we just got a clinic on site, which is pretty nice. So you could get free vaccinations, free checkups. But that's also something that, if your new office is offering, could definitely save you quite a lot of time and money.
Yeah. It's, time you don't have to then try to make a doctor's appointment and leave and then miss work and So yeah, that's really nice. And so, yeah, definitely really understanding that full offer. What is everything that's going into this package beyond just the compensation? And go ahead and ask questions of your network, ask questions of HR, do your research on the company website. And you do not have to accept an offer right on the spot, even if it's, a perfect offer. If you want to think about it a little bit, you certainly can. And you can always ask, can I get back to you in, 2 days? Now, of course, make sure that you actually get back to them well before the deadline. So if you ask for 48 hours, don't wait until 47 hours and 30 minutes. You're going to start to make them panic. But, if you don't feel, I really want to, think this over, I want to look at everything, don't feel like you have to answer right on the spot. And then, again, thinking about what are some of the other areas that you can negotiate if salary isn't something you can negotiate. And really, you don't want to play games with this. So you're not going to negotiate the salary and then negotiate the one benefit and then negotiate another benefit and do it a little piece at a time. You're going to get on their nerves. So you want to look at this thing as the whole package here is how you want to think about the offer. So if you do find yourself in a situation where you can negotiate, I always say one of the best ways to approach it is even to just simply ask, is there room for negotiation? They may give you the salary that you were hoping for. They may give you the benefits package you're hoping for. And it's still okay to negotiate for more. That is okay. So long as, of course, it's not something that's outrageously beyond what is a typical salary. So if the typical salary for that position is 60,000 and you're asking for 90, you're kind of going outside the ballpark there. It's a little extreme. But if you want to say, well, they're offering me 60 and that does pay for everything I want. However, could I negotiate for 65 or 70? You can always ask, is there room for negotiation? And if they say that there is, well, then say, okay, I was hoping, they may come back with, well, what were you thinking about? I was looking at the range of between 65 and 70. Is that something you can work with? Sure. Now, we don't want to say anything that, is, like this almost last bullet point here where it's just minuscule. You offer 40,000, but I really want 40,100. Now you just sound a little bit ridiculous. And we definitely don't want to seem like that. And you do want to have the process in writing. That can be through email. It could be you initiating the email. The reason why I say that is, one, it covers you. And also it holds the company accountable. There was my previous job. I used to work for Albany Technical College, and I was part of a grant. And at the end of the grant, we lost our jobs. I knew that going into it. I didn't mind. I knew I was moving up to this area. I thought it was perfect timing. I was like, oh, good. I get to be unemployed at the perfect time when I knew I was moving. However, the folks that were at Atlanta Technical College, they were promised they would get to keep their jobs, but it wasn't in writing. And that HR person left. a new HR person came in. And so when it came time for the grant to end, you had, 5 employees saying, where's my permanent job? And the college was saying, what are you talking about? You're part of a grant. You're unemployed. And they were furious because they had been promised verbally that they would be able to keep their job. So Kondwani, how did you keep track of your whole process with going back and forth and giving them the evidence and negotiating your latest salary package?
Definitely keeping a paper trail. So from the very first email communications, HR people, they're just people, they're human, they forget. So don't be scared to follow up. I am pretty sure I annoyed them with how many times I followed up, because I was just so ready and so eager. So, every few days it's like, hey, have you heard anything? And once they actually gave me an offer and I told them, okay, I will get back to you. And I asked for, they called me first. And most times they will call you first and just kind of gauge how you're feeling. But always ask them, hey, can you send this to me in an email so I can review and then think about it? If they forget, just send a follow-up email, maybe the next day. Hey, just checking in. Can I please get the offer details in writing so I can review them properly? Most times they will send it over to you. Just like with anything in life, as long as you ask, the worst thing they can say is no. And if they say no to giving you the offer details in writing, then that's probably not a good fit. So any counters that they come back with or that you come back with, they give you the offer and you have a counter offer, just follow up and say, hey, as we discussed, this is what I was thinking. Let me know if you have any objections or however you want to phrase the email. One thing that I learned this time around is that it's not just the salary or the package that you can negotiate. You can also negotiate your title. So that's something that I did, because knowing that the role that I originally applied for would take me almost 2 years to be able to get promoted into another role. So that's something I went back and like, hey, this is great, but what are the chances that we can keep everything the same? What are the chances that we can change my title to associate instead of analyst? And so she was like, oh, okay, let me go talk to my people and we'll find out. Followed up, sent it in writing. Hey, just wondering, the chances of blah, 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 blah. And a week later, it took a long time, but a week later, she came back and said, yeah, they agreed to do it. So don't be scared to ask for more than just, hey, I want more money. But if you see that there's another title that you would prefer or another role that you would prefer that's within scope, you can still ask, or at least they can tell you, well, we can't give you that right now, but maybe within the next 6 months or in a year, or maybe based on your performance, then we can take a look at that again.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, because like you said, the worst that's going to happen is that they say no. And then you have to decide, am I okay with that? Is that something I can walk away from? Is that something that I'm, all right, I'll move forward and let's reevaluate, at a certain time period. And I think also, and I'm glad you mentioned how long the process was taking. How long do you think it took from the time that you applied to the time that you actually accepted and everything went forward? How much time did that take roughly?
Let's see. I would say it took almost 2 months, about a month and a half from the time that I applied. So I talked to my friend first, and then I talked to a recruiter, and then I applied. And then it took a while to hear back. And I think it took about 2 to 3 weeks to get an email about an interview. And then after that, had to wait for the offer, and then I countered and had to wait another week or so for the counter offer or their final offer. And then background check. So it took almost 2 months. So it could take a while. For most companies, it's usually not, within a week. It usually takes about a month, 2 months. It could even take 3 months.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for sharing that, because I know that when you apply and you're waiting and, you want to follow up, but like you said, you don't want to, you don't want to be too aggressive, but you want to be aggressive just enough. It kind of, wears on your nerves a little bit. It's like, oh my gosh, should I call? Should I email? Who calls first? What should I do? And sometimes you do just have to give it some time, because you have no idea what's going on in the background. Someone could be out on vacation, which kind of can put some things, make it just kind of slow down just by doing that. So it is always, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. They may need, like you said, when you countered with, the job title, they have to go talk to someone, which maybe they were in meetings all that day and it took a while for them to get a hold of them, all these different things going on. And you do want to, in your communication, stay really positive. You want to try to avoid have to have, need to have, must have, I want. It's more about, what I had in mind was, what can we do? What if we consider this? How do you feel about that? Can we explore this possibility? What are the alternatives? Because you do want to keep it more about, let's keep this conversation going. Because if you start to say, well, I deserve, well, you don't deserve nothing. We got someone else right behind you that would, happily take this job. So we don't want to get, where they're on the defensive. So we want to make sure we keep this a very positive conversation. And when you accept, with enthusiasm, well before the deadline, accept, with the person who extended the offer, and always sending those thank you notes. So as we talk about in our interview workshop, write a thank you note after the interview. When you accept the offer, go ahead and write a thank you note for that as well. I know it was just wonderful when Tanya, when she had interviewed for our Gainesville position, she had, I think, gosh, Tanya, I think you sent us 2 thank you notes. It was wonderful. So that made us realize Tanya really wants this opportunity. That's fantastic. So again, always have, even if the final offer, if you have to write it in an email to say, this is what we've agreed upon, go ahead and do that. You do need to make sure you have all of that in writing. Now, if it so happens that just can't come to terms on it, it's just not happening. Well, you have to decide for yourself. Are you willing to walk away from that opportunity? Are you willing to compromise? But if you say, you know what, I just can't do this. It's just not going to pay the bills. It's just not what I feel my value is. Just make sure you decline graciously. Always send it, and by letter, I mean email. But, you can explain briefly why that, the salary just at this point in time is not something that you feel you can really accept, but you appreciate all the time and consideration. Maybe there would be another opportunity in the future. You really enjoyed meeting with them. It doesn't have to be super lengthy, but a couple of short paragraphs just kind of explaining why you weren't able to accept that offer, that you appreciate their time, so that you don't burn any of those bridges, right? We definitely don't want to do that, because what if another opportunity comes up, or what if their budget all of a sudden opens up and they say, hey, this person was great, we really wanted them. Now we've got the salary that we can pay them. So you never know what's going to happen in this whole process. And then, of course, we can help you with all of these, with this whole process. Like I said, Kondwani and I, we kind of, what were some of the ways we could go back and forth with her first job out of school, because I know especially when you just graduate, it's a little bit scary. Kondwani, how did you feel during that first venture into negotiating your salary and accepting an offer from a company?
I will say you definitely pushed me to ask if they could negotiate, because I was definitely scared. First actual job offer, not counting, the Krogers and the Cricket Wirelesses from before. It was definitely nerve-wracking, but once you ask, like I said, the worst they can say is no. And unfortunately, they said no, but they still had a lot of other great benefits that I was looking forward to getting. So, but that, I think, having the courage to do that the first time definitely helped me the next few times that I've had to go through kind of a similar process. And it's not as scary as it sounds to just be like, hey, what are the possibilities of maybe, I was thinking this number, or because of ABC, I feel like, this is what I'm bringing to the table and this number might work better. It's not as nerve-wracking as it sounds, because at the end of the day, they could say yes, or they could meet in the middle, and it could be a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it is scary. It is nerve-wracking. And everyone, Kondwani started where a lot of you are as well. Like she said, she worked at Cricket. She, had the entry-level jobs, had an internship, had to work her way up to where she is now. And now look at her, she's just doing so awesome. It's just so nice to see her. So as you can see, we've got some websites here at the bottom. So of course you can always look for internships and job. In fact, Kondwani's first job she found on Handshake.
I did, yeah, I did. I had no idea what Capital Group was, but I was like, hey, let's apply anyway, and then researched afterwards. But Handshake definitely has a lot of good opportunities. I did hear from a lot of my other coworkers from different schools to say that they found the same job on Handshake. So, don't knock it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can always look for some great opportunities on Handshake. And then of course, there's our website there, ung.edu/careers. That's where you can schedule an appointment. That's our website. We have all kinds of resources on there as well. On the main page to make an appointment, just scroll down a little bit, click on the button that says schedule an appointment. And of course, all of our social media, pick one of your favorites. You can see all of the events that are happening right there. So that's where you can find all that great information. Kondwani, is there anything else that you want to share before we let everybody go for the day?
Yeah, I definitely use career services, because I think I am where I am today because of them, not just because I worked there for a few months, but Lori was just always such a great help. Mock interviews, especially, just going to someone in career services and say, hey, this is the interview I have coming up. Can we go through some of the potential questions? So they can help you from the very start of applying for a job to the negotiating and anything after that if needed. And you can also use me as a resource. You can follow my LinkedIn. It's just my name, Kondwani Kapembwa. And I would be more than happy to answer any questions you may have or assist in any way.
Yeah, and she's done that before. I will say, I have someone that's looking to get into finance and they want to talk about career opportunities. Kondwani. So she has been great at definitely helping our fellow Nighthawks, and which has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Kondwani, for being with us today and sharing all that great information. I think it's just, phenomenal, all the work that you've been able to accomplish and all you've been able to do. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.